Hi everybody, today we're going to start our next unit, which is Unit 7 on angles. It's technically called geometry. It's basically going to be split up into two parts, like angles and their relationships, and then we go to transformations, which is all stuff that you've done a little bit of last year. So yeah, like it shouldn't be anything new, but I have not filled this in at all, so I can't do the clicky thing and things pop up. So I'll be typing this by hand, which means your video might be a little bit longer. But let's just go ahead and get started. Basic vocabulary. So right angle, acute angle, obtuse, and straight angle. Those are all words that were on your geometry selfie project. So they're not new words for you, but let's go ahead and define them. Right angles, they basically just have a measurement of 90 degrees. Okay, that's it. They make like a perfect corner. You guys all know what a right angle looks like. Go ahead and draw a picture of a right angle and like next to it so you have a visual as well. Okay, an acute angle has a measure less than 90 degrees. And you guys can use the degree symbol when you write this. I just don't have that on my computer, so I'm not going to do it. I can't. I'm going to make this smaller. So it has a measure less than 90 degrees, where an obtuse actually has a measure greater than 90 degrees. What did I write? Put that up in the corner. That's not how you spell degrees. Degrees. Make it smaller, and there you go. And a straight angle. So acute angles, whatever, like little angle, and then a wider angle. Just go ahead and draw a picture. And then a straight angle has a measure of 180 degrees, and it just makes a straight line. So straight angle is a straight line basically. It has a measure of 180. So you guys are going to go ahead and classify these. So you have two angles where they're actually drawn, and two where you just have to measure. Once you classify it, if it's acute, obtuse, right, or straight. Okay? So go ahead and give that a try on your own. You can pause the video. Moving on, so measuring angles, we will use a protractor. I don't think we're going to use a protractor today, probably tomorrow. I can't remember. Yeah, you might need a protractor actually for these notes. That's okay, I have them in the room, so. But a protractor basically looks like this, okay? There's two sets of numbers. They're going in opposite directions. And that's what you use to measure your angle. So one part of your angle will always line up with this bottom line, and then however it opens. Like if it's opening this way, the measure is 110, because this one's clearly an obtuse angle, so I want the obtuse measurement. If it was opening this way, it would be acute, and I want the acute measurement. So you need to be careful about what your angle looks like. So it's really nice to identify it, like is it acute or obtuse before you even measure it. That way when you get the measurements, it makes sense, like which one you pick. Okay? So I actually think there might be a couple for you to try on your own. Yeah. So before we do that though, the symbol that we use for angle is like a little acute angle. It just looks like an angle. And we use letters to label each like corner of an angle. So like angle ABC is right as angle ABC. The middle letter, the B, would be the label for the vertex, which is the corner of your angle. Okay? So I want you guys to go ahead and try and try to label these. Don't care what letters you use. Okay? Just remember that the middle letter has to be for this vertex right here. Okay? So it could be like QRS or TUV, or, you know, like it's up to you. And then I want you to grab a protractor and measure these angles. Okay? So try your best to measure them. Remember I told you, look at them. Is it acute or obtuse? So what kind of measure should it be? Should it be above 90, less than 90, whatever. Okay? So you're going to give that a try. The next thing we're going to do is congruency. In math, congruent means equal or the same measure. Okay? That's all congruent means. It just means they are the same measurement. So, for example, these two angles here, even though they don't look identical, because one's facing up, one's facing down, they still have the same measurement of 110 degrees. So they are congruent. And the symbol for congruency, I'm going to have to use a marker for this, is basically it's an equal sign, but we put a little squiggle over it. Ooh, that's a really bad one, but it's okay. You'll survive. Okay? So we just do a little squiggle over it. Just a little squiggle. Alright? And getting out of this marker, going back here, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place. This is what happens when I don't prepare. I was going to teach it to you guys in class, like, all together, but decided not to. So, this symbol, like, symbols that I have right here, basically I could read as the angle ABC is congruent to angle PQR. That's how it's written, or that's how it's read out, at least. So, what am I trying to do? There we go. That's what I want to do first. There. Okay? And now, so that's the basic stuff for angles, just to get you, like, remind you how to work with angles again. Now we're going into the stuff that you need for this class, Math 8. So, here are some relationship vocabulary. So, complementary angles. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. There we go. Complementary angles. Two angles that sum up to be 90 degrees. Basically, their measures, if you add them together, gives you 90 degrees. That's all complementary are. Okay? Supplementary are two angles that sum up to be 180 degrees. And a nice way to remember that, let's see if I can do this with a marker. Let's try it. Because supplementary and complementary, you guys know they add up, like what tends to happen is people know they add up to something, but they get the two numbers confused. So a C for complementary can be made into a 90, just like that. And an S for supplementary can be made into the 180. Okay? So, that's just one way to remember it. Vertical angles are two angles opposite from each other and are congruent. So that means they're going to equal, they're the same measure. Basically, they're across the vertex from each other. So when you have two intersecting lines, that's fine. For example, ooh, that's not a really good line. This one and this one are congruent because they're across this vertex here. They're the same, they're vertical, okay? They're the same measurement, so you don't have to worry about it, okay? Two angles opposite from, sorry, I don't know why I'm reading that. Adjacent angles are two angles that share a side and a vertex. Basically means they're next to each other. Okay? So, for example, if I had, here's two vertical ones. That's just an intersect lines. Adjacent angles would be this one and this one. They share this side and and this vertex here. So these two are adjacent to each other. Okay? So let's try some examples. Number 1, determine if the following angles are complementary. So that means they should be adding up to 90 degrees. Okay? So I got 18 plus 72. If that equals 90, then they are. So 18 plus 72 does actually equal 90. So yes, they are. They're complementary. Even though they're not right next to each other, if I put them together, they'd form a perfect right angle, which is great. Number 2, name 2 angles that are supplementary. So remember, 2 angles that make a, what's it called? A 180 degree angle, which means it's a straight angle. So here's a straight line. These 2 angles, E and D, make up that straight line. So angles E and D are supplementary. But also, if you look at this other straight line right here, then, guys, I'm sorry, someone just walked in rudely, but we'll persevere, I guess. So this angle is also a straight angle, and it's also made up of 2 angles, A and E. So that's another thing you could have said for it. Both are correct. It's up to you which one you guys see first, which is totally cool. Okay? B, C, and D are not supplementary mostly just because it's made up of 3 angles. Okay? So you only want 2 angles for your supplementary, and for your complementary, same deal. Okay. Next one, name 2 angles that are adjacent. So there's lots of different angles that you can name here. Let's do this. So adjacent just means next to each other. Well, A and E are next to each other, so that would work. A and B are next to each other, so that would work. I'm gonna run out of colors, I know it. B and C are next to each other. C and D are next to each other. D and E are next to each other. It just goes on and on. So there's so many different angles that you could choose. And it looks so gross now. But it's basically as long as they're next to each other, it's totally like they're adjacent. Okay? So you can write out all those different ones. Example 4. What angle is vertical to 45? So remember, it's across the vertex from each other. Okay? Across the vertex. So there's the vertex, I just drew it in. Straight across from 45 degrees is S. So that's what we go ahead and write in there. And what's the measure? Now, because they are congruent, they're the same measure. Okay? So it's the same exact measurement, and that would be 45 as well. Okay? Ooh, let me move that so it's actually in the right spot. So here, name a pair of vertical angles. Well, the ones directly across from each other, and they have to be the same measure too. Okay, so here's the vertex. G is not the same measurement as I, because I is not a right angle. Someone might come into my room again, which is not going to make me happy. F is across from I, but they're not the same measurement. J is across from H. They look to be the same. So, and they're made up by these 2 intersecting lines. So J and H are actually vertical. Okay? So that's what we're going to write. J and H. Of course, it doesn't come up on the lines because that would be helpful if it were. So J and H are vertical angles. Okay? Now you guys are going to try this on your own. We will go over it. Okay? But try to identify at least 1 pair from each. There's a lot of different options here. Okay? So don't get overwhelmed by it. Just start with the vertex for vertical angles and go from there. Alright? Lots of different options. But that's it. Okay? It's not too long of a video. And I did it all before school. Yay me. Alright. Sorry for the interruption. I'll answer questions in class and I'll see you there. Bye.